Muy buenas tardes con todos. En algunos segundos vamos a salir al aire. Por favor, tener en cuenta los siguientes presentaciones, que hoy tenemos dos presentaciones. Y a la vez, por favor, para tener una dinámica, el expositor va a pedirles que hagan una interactuación. Si es posible, podrían tener activos sus redes sociales para que haya una interactuación en su Instagram o Facebook. Tenerlo en cuenta, por favor, para que haya una dinámica. Muchas gracias. En unos segundos salimos al aire, por favor. Estén listos, por favor. En unos segundos salimos al aire. Muy buenas tardes a todos los participantes. Les saluda Fred Contreras y le damos la bienvenida a todos los profesoras y profesores al TDC 2020 organizado por SBS Librería Internacional. Este año es su primer formato 100% digital que nos permite además contar con docentes, colegas conectados de diferentes países como Brasil, Bolivia, España y Perú como país anfitrión. A nombre de SBS Librería Internacional queremos agradecerles su asistencia a este evento y sobre todo reconocer la maravillosa labor que han desarrollado los docentes durante este desafiante año 2020. Como todos los años, queremos ser parte de la constante labor de actualizaciones que realizan los docentes de inglés para seguir brindando a sus alumnos más y mejores motivos para seguir aprendiendo el idioma que abre las puertas al mundo. Como muchos ya sabemos, a SBS por sus libros, sus eventos o sus librerías, pero les invito un poco más a conocer sobre en la siguiente presentación. Equipo, adelante por favor con la presentación.
En SBS Librería Internacional estamos comprometidos con la educación. Brindamos materiales de calidad que abarcan las más diversas áreas del conocimiento humano en formatos físicos y digitales. Nuestra historia comienza hace 24 años, de la mano de nuestros líderes fundadores. Somos parte del grupo SBS Internacional, con sedes en Argentina, Brasil, Bolivia y Perú. SBS Librería Internacional crece cada día desde 1996. Hoy somos una de las cadenas más grandes en Sudamérica, orientada a producir y distribuir libros y materiales especializados en la enseñanza de idiomas. Nuestro propósito es contribuir en el quehacer educativo, profesional y cultural de nuestra comunidad. Nuestra propuesta de valor, orientada siempre al cliente, a la innovación y a la educación, nos ha permitido posicionarnos como una empresa que no solo facilita contenidos en diferentes idiomas a nuestros usuarios, sino que también nos convierte en un espacio donde se promueve el desarrollo profesional de los docentes, la generación y difusión de eventos académicos y culturales, convirtiéndonos así no solo en un lugar donde se pueda adquirir el libro deseado, sino en un espacio para estar, compartir y aprender. Con la finalidad de satisfacer los requerimientos de nuestros clientes y del mercado editorial, contamos con 16 librerías en todo el país y una renovada librería online en las que presentamos la más destacada producción e innovación editorial nacional e internacional. Somos conscientes de la repercusión de la tecnología en todo ámbito del conocimiento y la recreación, y por ello, SBS Online se posiciona como un potente canal de búsqueda y adquisición de material educativo y recreativo que permite acercar a nuestros clientes miles de títulos a pocos clics de distancia y desde la comodidad de su hogar. Nuestra propuesta editorial contiene materiales y contenidos por áreas temáticas. La enseñanza y aprendizaje de los idiomas inglés, portugués, francés, italiano, español, alemán, entre otros. La formación educativa y profesional cuenta con publicaciones especializadas, académicas y técnicas, libros de interés general con las últimas tendencias de la industria editorial, así como bibliografía básica e imprescindible. Por todo este desarrollo e innovación corporativa, queremos compartir nuestra conmemoración. En este marco consolidamos nuestra presencia en Perú con librerías ubicadas estratégicamente en los departamentos de Lima, Cusco, Arequipa, Trujillo, Piura, Chiclayo, Iquitos, Huancayo. La librería SBS Online, servicios de delivery a nivel nacional, presencia en ferias virtuales del libro, así como presentaciones, streamings, conferencias online, concursos, promociones y sorteos, entre otras actividades. SBS Librería Internacional, soluciones para quien enseña y para quien aprende.
Well, coming back live. Now, from now on, the presentation will be in English. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, to commence this event, I'm going to thank Pearson Education for participating in this event as every year. Pearson is a renowned publisher in Peru and in the world. And to know a little bit more about them, I invite you to watch a video. Please, team, let's go. Okay, coming back live again. Now, let me introduce you our first speaker this afternoon, our distinguished international speaker, Nick Perkins, with a topic "The Future is Now, teaching skills you never learn on platforms you never expected to use. So, this is a brief information about Nick. He has worked in education and publishing for over 20 years. He taught English and managed the ALT department at Externado University of Colombia in the early 2000s. Before becoming academic development manager for Latin America at Pearson, in 2012, Nick co-founded an educational consultancy where he worked on a wide range of language education projects with public and private institutions in Latin America and Europe. He went on to work full-time for the British Council as a school development manager and exams operations and transformation manager for the Americas. In 2019, Nick took a self-funded sabbatical and went bicycle touring through Colombia and Ecuador. Now he provides freelance educational consultancy, language and translation services to clients and institutions in Colombia and around the world. And he is the global ambassador for English Code, person exiting new ELT series for children. So everybody, let's welcome to TDC Nick Perkins. Good afternoon, sir. It's all of you.
Hi, Fred, and everybody. Fred, thank you for that lovely introduction. And just before I get started, I would like to thank SBS and Pearson for everything they've done to get me here today, and for everything they've done to organize this event. So without further ado, let us begin. I'm not sure if you can see my presentation. Great, you can now, that's brilliant. So what are we going to be talking about today? I think, well, I hope that the title is fairly clear. Just to give you an idea of where we're going to be going, we're going to look at online teaching and learning, and then we're going to take a brief look at future skills. I think my abstract perhaps gave the idea that we were going to take a longer look at future skills, but I wrote the abstract before I'd seen the other presenters' talks, and I think to avoid overlap, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the online teaching and learning part than the future skills part, especially because of this bizarre situation we find ourselves in, where, you know, for many years I've been researching and training teachers on the need to incorporate more digital support into their teaching and into their students' learning. And in fact, many years ago, I started to think and to develop an idea that it's not that technology is going to displace teachers, it's that teachers that use technology are going to displace teachers that don't use technology. And that used to be true. It's not anymore, because all of a sudden, you know, all of us, or many of us all over the world, have been thrust into this situation where, like it or not, we have to spend all of our day teaching online. And I think for many of us, it wasn't something that we necessarily thought would happen. We didn't conceptualize this when we were thinking about becoming teachers. Our learners, and definitely their parents and caregivers, definitely didn't think that this was necessarily the way that their children were going to be learning. But whatever, like it or not, this is where we are. And all of a sudden, people have been caught out, unprepared in many cases, for the complexities of maintaining a curriculum, maintaining engagement, as much ourselves as among our students. So what we're going to do is spend a bit of time looking at some best practice for online teaching, which will help your students to learn. This is based on my experience. I have been doing online teaching and teacher training for probably close to 15 years now. I definitely pioneered online teacher training a very, very long time ago for the organization that I worked for then. So I'm going to take my own personal experience. I'm going to take the experience of colleagues of mine, other teacher trainers, research that I've done, talking to teachers, and especially in the last few months, talking to children and young people about the experience that they have had of suddenly finding themselves having to learn by staring at a computer screen all day, very often all alone, or perhaps even worse, fighting with siblings, fighting in the best possible sense of the word, with siblings for time on what is sometimes the only machine in the house that can access the internet. So you're all aware of this. I think for many of you, what I talk about today, or at least I hope for many of you, it will be an opportunity to refresh and to reconsider things that you already know. And I think for some of you, I hope for some of you, these will be ideas that will really help you to walk into your virtual classes on Monday with a new outlook and some new ideas on how to engage your students. One last thing, just before we get started, as Fred mentioned, I'll be asking you to do something with social media a little bit later on. What I'm going to do with this session is I'm going to deliver it using some of the aspects that I think are best practice in online learning. And one of those is diversity and shifting rhythm and focus. I think Fred mentioned Instagram and Facebook. I'll actually be using Instagram and Twitter. You're welcome to use Facebook, but it's harder to share things openly on Facebook. So Instagram and Twitter. And don't worry if you don't have either of those platforms, you can also use my email address, and I'll explain all of that a little bit later on. So let's get going. First part, temporarily transitioning to online teaching and learning. And we do hope it's temporary, although I think the word temporary is perhaps used in its broadest sense here. I know for some people it's been already a number of months. For my colleagues here in Colombia, it's been 5, close to 6 months now of teaching online. Some of you less, some of you more. And I think for some of you, this is going to extend right through to the end of the calendar year. And God forbid, even into next year, but we'll take things as they come. So I've divided the session into different segments. The first of which I think is very important is the space and the setup. We're used to having our classrooms. Our classrooms are our domains, our kingdoms, and we set them up as best we can to facilitate learning. And all of a sudden we have all of that removed. And within the space and setup, we've got a number of aspects to consider. Some of this might seem quite strange and perhaps even a little bit basic, but I think it's worth covering. First thing, most important thing, as they say in the business, lights, camera, action. Light is one of the most important aspects of any online learning situation. And it's surprising how many people forget that. Natural light is obviously much better than any kind of artificial light. I know not everybody has the benefit that I do of the space that I'm in, which I'll show you in a moment, of having a lot of natural light. If you do have natural light, use it as much as you possibly can. Natural light is a friend and a foe. If you have a window, whatever you do, don't sit in front of the window with your back to the window. It makes you like some kind of sort of strange alien being with light emanating from outside. And especially in a language learning situation, it surprises me how often I see this happening. People trying to teach with light behind them. It means that your students can't see your face, which is such a fundamental, especially your mouth, such a fundamental part of any language teaching situation. If you're not lucky to have natural light, or as is the case for me at the moment, it's late afternoon in Bogota. Bogota's close to the equator, and so therefore it gets dark every evening around about 6:20, 6:30. It's now 5:17 where I am, and so it's gradually getting a little bit darker. So, you need to think about your lighting. So you might want to use some artificial lights. I'll show you, like I said a moment ago, my setup in a moment, but I have a light next to me, so I could turn on the light. Now, I've got a light right now pointed straight at me, and that's sort of perhaps your one of the first things to think about with in terms of lighting. Direct lighting is never particularly flattering to yourself, and it's also horrible because you've got this light shining in your eyes. I can't see anything now. I've just got this sort of light mark etched across my retina. So I'm just going to turn that away a little bit of indirect lighting. I'll bounce it off my ceiling so it improves the lighting without making me look weird. Camera angle. This might sound really basic, but again, it's something that I see again and again and again. I've been doing a lot of observations as a part of a project I have at the moment. a contract. I've been doing a lot of class observations of teachers teaching online. A lot of teachers have laptops. A lot of us have. I'm working from a laptop right now. The problem with laptops, when you put them on a surface, if you don't raise them up, they're below you. And so I'm just going to do something. I'm going to get myself into the position I would be in if my laptop were flat on my desk. And this puts me in a position a little bit like this. And I'm sort of talking to you from here, and it's a little bit weird because it's never nice to be looking up somebody's nose, basically. So, just a couple of books. I'll show you in a minute. I actually use a box from a drill that I have that's the perfect height to put the camera at the right height for me to look at. Also, in terms of cameras, right now I'm using the webcam on my laptop. That kind of works when it's daytime, when there's quite a bit of natural light. It's also worth, if you can, investing in a more professional level webcam, especially if you are teaching in the evenings or early mornings when there's not so much light. You get a much better quality image. Location and sound. It's very often said in situations of any kind of presentation that sound is much more important even than the lights and the camera. And that's for a very good reason. I'm just going to cover my microphone for a minute. And so I hope that for you now, the sound has become a little bit strange. I've probably become a little bit distant. You're like, what's going on? If you can't hear what's going on, it doesn't matter how good the image is. It doesn't matter how dynamic your teacher is. It doesn't matter how brilliant your materials are. If you can't hear what's going on, or the starts cutting up because the microphone's not good enough, then it's a lost cause. In terms of your location, that's really important. I choose this location. I happen to quite like this background. I've been told by quite a few people it looked interesting. It gives them something to look at behind me. They start wondering what things are. When they get bored of what I'm saying, they've got something to look at. I'll show you an image in a moment from a meeting I was on just this week, which shows you exactly why background is so important. Now, again, I'm very lucky. I live alone. And so I have the entire place to myself. I can set up my computer wherever I want to. It's not quite so easy if you've got children or partners, or perhaps the only space that you have is a very small space with a wall very close behind you. But that's no excuse for not putting up some images on the wall, some posters. You say, well, we're on lockdown, quarantine. I can't get images or posters. Well, find an old book and tear some pages out, stick them up on the wall, put something behind you, make it a little bit more interesting. And we'll have a look at other ways of making it interesting in just a second when we look at alternative locations. Another thing, don't forget, always have some water next to you. Hydration, super important. Might sound really basic, but I have been on literally thousands of hours of online meetings and classes and all sorts of teacher training sessions. It's absolutely incredible to me how little I see people drinking. Stop every now and again, take a drink of water. Especially with the level of stress that trying to manage an online class with children or teenagers brings, you get dehydrated. Your mouth goes dry. That makes it more difficult for people to understand you. It makes it very uncomfortable for you. And there's nothing wrong with saying, just give me a sec, I'm just going to have a drink of water. Before every class, stick a Post-it note to your computer. Fill up your water supply. Alternative locations. You're only going to be with me now for sort of 45, 50 minutes or so before we hand over to some questions. And so that's great. This is fine. This is not going to get too boring, I hope, in 45 minutes. But what about your students who are there with you day in, day out, same old background behind you? Why not? I'm on a laptop. Let's go for a walk around my apartment. So I'm not going to show you my apartment too much. I think it's fairly clean. It's a bit of a mess. It's been a busy week, but there's no reason why I couldn't take you into my living room area, talk to you for a little while from my sofa. It's a little bit more complex because, as I was saying before, now I'm now backlit, which is never ideal. So it's probably a little bit harder for you to see me. Also, laptop moving around because it's in my hand or on my lap is not ideal, but at least this breaks up the rhythm a little bit. It's a lovely day in Bogota today, and it's still light, so I could take you for a little walk with me. I do hope you're still with me. I have no way of knowing if you can still see me, but take you out onto my balcony. It's a little bit noisy out here, but it gives you something else to look at, right? Imagine you're a young a child or a teenager. This is going to be a lot more interesting and dynamic. You look the lovely, well, I hope lovely, afternoon in Bogota. It's the golden hour here, so the mountains are all beautiful, this sort of orangey yellow color. Anyway, I think you get my point. I could teach a class out here if it wasn't too noisy or if it wasn't raining. So, shake things up a bit. I have to walk through my kitchen to get back, so why not, have a class in the kitchen, especially if you're dealing with some of the things that we're going to be talking about a little bit later around future skills, which incorporate, especially those that incorporate other subject areas into the English classroom. Then you may be looking at science. Well, great. I mean, you're teaching from home. You're in a kitchen. What better place to find some interesting things to do science experiments with? So it's not all doom and gloom. I think I've heard a lot of people very concerned about how tricky it's been to transition to online teaching and learning. And I think it's not all necessarily doom and gloom. There's a lot of opportunities come from the location that you're in. Moving on. Oh, sorry, one last thing, location and sound. I spoke about sound before. I just wanted to say, having said that possibly the two most important things are the lighting and the sound, sound is very, very difficult, especially when you're dealing with non-ideal situations. When you watch a movie or a professionally produced video, what you're not seeing is all of the different acoustic baffles, they're called, basically elements, materials which help to reduce echo and make it easier to understand people. Now, this is not a problem in a situation where you're using your ears to hear the person who's speaking in the same space as you, just because of the way that audio and sound waves work and the way that your ears are able to process those sound waves. However, when you start using a microphone, things get really, really complicated, and echo becomes a huge issue in the way that sound bounces off the things around you. So what I'm going to show you now is my own setup. This is exactly what it looks like where I am now. Now, what's going on? Yeah, I took the pillows off my bed and I put them on the table next to me. And this is a trick I learned. I used to do a radio show many years ago. And sometimes I would have to pre-record the show. And a trick I can't remember who it was. I wish I could give them credit, but somebody taught me or told me the trick of using different soft elements to reduce the amount of echo you get. So I'm talking to you now on my computer's on top of a wooden table, as you can see. I'm in quite an open area, so there's lots of ways for the sound to get lost, and then it bounces back and things start sounding really, really weird. So I take the pillows off my bed. They are clean, I promise. I put new pillowcases on today because I knew that you were going to be seeing them. So a couple of pillows, one on either side and one behind, and that helps enormously to dampen any kind of echo in the sound. And that's especially important if you don't have a little headset like this one. If you're talking onto the microphone of your computer, it's even more important because the microphone's further away from you and is subject to receiving more echoes. And one last thing on this topic. If you're looking for a super high quality one, I checked this a few months ago when I started looking more and more into how am I going to help teachers with this situation that they never found themselves expected to find themselves in. I spoke to some audio engineer friends of mine and a friend of mine who's a musician, does a lot of recording at home, and I asked them all what the best cheap microphone was to use for things like online teaching or video conferencing. And it was absolutely incredible. Without them consulting amongst each other, all of them said the same thing. If you're going to spend less than $250 to $300, which I think all of us are going to spend less than that, they said the best one you can get, these little Apple earbuds. Personally, they don't really work for me in terms of sound because they're too small for my huge ears. But what they all said to me was they have the best microphone of any headset. Now, they're not the cheapest. They cost around about $25 to $30, depending on where you are. But if you are looking to improve the audio quality of what you're doing, these are brilliant. The microphone has a really good gate, I think it's called. It stops sound from popping and things like that. And I was told they have very good compression, which is about bringing the sound down into a smaller space and making it more intelligible. In terms of space and setup, I said I'd show you an image from a conference I was on this week. I spent an hour talking to two lovely ladies who I respect enormously, but it felt like they'd been arrested, and I was talking to them from their prison cells. This is complete coincidence. I did not ask them to do this on purpose for just so I could make an impact in this presentation. They both happened to be sitting in front of these white or cream walls, and because they were away from natural light, they only had artificial light. It made the walls look as if they were grey, and it was just really boring. I mean, yeah, we had a really interesting topic that we were discussing, and I've put these emojis on them to maintain their innocence. And anonymity. But anyway, the point is that, can you imagine if you were a student and you had to sit looking at your teacher, looking like that all day? I mean, yeah, I think you get the idea. And I'm going to ask you to take a selfie in a moment. Hopefully you're in the space that you've been teaching in. If not, do so when you get home and just have a look at it. Think, how would I feel if I had to look at this hour after hour after hour after hour? Stick some stuff on the wall. So, activity number one, I said that I would practice what I preach, and we would do this session breaking it up a little bit. I've been talking now for something in the region of, I can't find my timer, and I forgot to turn my timer on, so I don't know how long I've been talking for, but I think it's about 15 to 20 minutes so far. And that's way too long. I mean, you shouldn't be talking, or that your student shouldn't be doing any one thing for more than about 5 minutes, let alone 50. But anyway, it's time for a break. So please take out your phones, cameras, whatever it is you use to take photographs. And I want you to do two things. You're going to have 90 seconds. First thing is I want you to take a selfie. So grab your camera, take a selfie exactly where you are right now. Okay. And then if you're at home, take a photo of your pet. If you don't have pets, take a photo of something that you happen to like in your home. I'd probably take a picture of one of my bicycles or, whatever. Or take a photograph of the view out of your window, or just literally of the view from where you're sitting right now. Please do both of those things. You have 90 seconds, and a tone will sound at the end of the 90 seconds. Okay, just 10 seconds left. Okay, save those photos. We're going to use them again later. You'll see mine as well. Moving on to your students, considerations to bear in mind with your students. First one, most important. I'll come back to this again and again and again and again. The group size. There is absolutely no way, and this is perhaps a little bit controversial, but there's no way in a language class that you are ever going to progress if you try to teach the same number of students that you would usually teach in a standard school-sized class. What I'm talking about is what I've seen happening, and I've been observing in the class observations I was mentioning and talking to young people and teachers. If you've got 20, 25, 30, perhaps even more students in your class, there's no way that any of them are really going to learn very much at all if they're all at the same time in the same class for the same amount of time. I think with the changes that we've had to make in education in the current crisis, I think we can also make some other changes. So I would argue, and in fact have tried out, that you'll learn more or your students will learn more if you divide them into smaller groups. So let's say you've got 25 students. You could either have 25 people sitting together for an hour, or you could split them up into groups and have each of those groups of 5 perhaps. So you've got 5 groups of 5. Each of them will have 10 minutes with you, 50 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes all together at the end. Well, what are the others doing in the other 40, 50 minutes or whatever? Well, I guess they could still observe what you're doing. But you're giving them other tasks that they can more easily complete autonomously, independently. This will help them enormously with their engagement and focus. It's very, very difficult to ask, especially the younger they are, to ask them to maintain engagement and focus if they're just one little teeny tiny thumbnail amongst all the other teeny tiny thumbnails sitting there all on their own, staring at the screen. The other thing for you, it's very, very difficult to manage large groups anyway. It's difficult enough to manage large groups of students when you're in the classroom. It's almost impossible to manage a large group of students when you're in a virtual environment, especially because invariably you have to put them on mute. Otherwise you get all sorts of echo and feedback happening. So everyone's on mute, so you can't hear what they're doing. So they could be doing absolutely anything because most of the video conferencing platforms will have small thumbnails, but not very many of them fit on any one screen. So as a basic rule of thumb, I would suggest that you should not have any more students in your teaching, your ongoing teaching group than can fit on the screen in decent sized thumbnails so that you can see what they're doing. The other thing is the larger the group, like I said, the more that you have to put them on mute. So it's just basically you talking and then you might ask them to say something and then everybody else has to go on mute and then one person. That's not really conducive to an interactive and interesting or even productive teaching and learning environment. If you have groups of 4 or 5 students learning for shorter periods of time, you can have all 4 or 5 of them with their microphones open with much less risk of feedback, and you get much more interactive teaching and learning going on. The other thing with the group size and the way that affects engagement and focus is the time and the density of tasks and the way that you can support those tasks. Now, in a standard classroom environment, you would usually give some form of presentation. You would explain to the students what the objective is of the activity they're about to do. You would explain to them how you expect them to do the activity, and you would very often give them a period of time, an indication of the time that they will have to conduct that activity. You then say, go ahead. So whatever it is, whether it's a group discussion, whether it's a reading, whether it's a reading comprehension, whether they're producing some language, whether they're doing a grammar, whatever the activity is, you don't then just sit and wait, right? You walk around the classroom, and your experience as a teacher enables you to very, very quickly notice the students that need support. So as you're walking around the classroom, you're glancing down at the book or the piece of paper that they may be writing on, and you can very quickly spot the students that need help, that are making mistakes, and you'll focus on an individual student and say, well, do it like this, do it like that. I suggest you do. You'll give them their feedback. If it's a discussion amongst the students, you'll be listening, and you can very, very quickly hear which of them need your support or which of them aren't actually doing it. You can't do that in an online teaching situation. It's impossible. You can't just wander around, because to see what people are doing, you have to go to each individual, and you just don't have time. And you've got 30 kids in your class, it's going to take you a minute to see each of them. The activity was only supposed to last 4 minutes, but it takes you 30 minutes to watch each of them. I think you get the idea. So the more that you can reduce the number of students, the greater the level of support you can give to them. Something else you may want to think about are what are known as breakout rooms. If you know what I'm talking about, great. If you don't, part of your homework, investigate breakout rooms. Lots of the video conferencing platforms enable you to create different little rooms. So you then, say, using your leader interface send different people to different rooms, and they go and interact with each other for a little while. Now, this could happen in a speaking activity, but it could also happen in a writing activity, so that the students support each other. You're splitting them into smaller groups, which enables you to more quickly get round those groups and give them different levels, the support that they need. And the last thing about students is the concept of resource availability. Now, I am very, very aware of how difficult it is for many teachers at the moment, because not all homes have one device per child, especially the younger the children, the less the probability, the lower the probability that they will have their own device. So very often, if you have siblings, you know, the kids are having to share one device amongst the siblings. You can't expect them to be there all the time. There are other problems with households due to lack of resources. They don't have the devices they need, or they don't have an internet connection which is fast enough, or they may not have one at all. This is very, very difficult. We can't, in a presentation like this, or even as, you know, as teachers and organizations, we can't change the world, but we can adapt a little bit to try to give a little bit more support to enable more people to access what we're doing. So at a very basic level, record everything you do. And I've been saying this for years and years and years, even for classroom education. You know, get somebody to record the most important part of the class so that they can share it with their friends and they can cover it later. Now, this is vital. This should be mandatory. If you record your classes, it means that kids who have siblings that they had to drop out early because their sibling had a class, or there was noise in the home and they couldn't concentrate properly on what was happening, or the internet connection dropped, or there was no internet connection. They need to go to a friend's house or an internet cafe. They can do this. They can do this at a time which is more suitable to them. They can rewatch your classes. So if you're using a video conferencing platform that doesn't allow you to record, it's the wrong video conferencing platform. You need to change and get one that allows you to record. Or if you can't do that, record the classes on your phone. Post them to a private YouTube group. Do whatever it takes, because, you know, it's not fair on the kids if you don't. Anyway, moving on. Biggest one, as I've already said, reduce the group size. Don't do it arbitrarily. Don't risk your job. But this should be a conversation that is happening right now. It should be an ongoing conversation in teachers' meetings between coordinators and teachers, coordinators and directors. This is absolutely vitally important. Okay, activity number 2. We've been sitting down for ages. Well, we haven't really. We've only been sitting down for a few minutes, but I've been sitting down all day. I've been on conferences. I was putting some making some changes to this presentation. And also, I happened to notice my neighbor across the road. Now, don't want to sound like some weird old man who stares into his neighbor's house. That's not the case. It just happens that I have a neighbor across the road. They are friends of mine as well. And they have a 9-year-old boy. And their living room, the area which he currently uses as his classroom, is right in front of my living room. So whenever I stand up, you notice, you acknowledge each other, you see what's going on. This poor kid, 9 years old, he's sitting in front of a computer screen with a set of headphones on, staring at the screen, almost immobile. I kid you not, from 7 o'clock in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon. He has a small break in the morning and about half an hour for lunch. Wow, I'm surprised he's still there. And in actual fact, 2 kids that I've spoken to recently have been talking about dropping out of school and, you know, pushing their parents to take them out of school. Anyway, I don't want to go too far into this, but part of that is the boredom of just sitting in the same place. So we're going to move now. We're going to do a little yoga activity. I don't know if any of you do yoga. I do a lot of yoga. I find it very useful. We're going to do a very short activity that helps to break the routine, gets a bit of blood flowing to the head, releases a bit of tension in your lower back. I would suggest doing this at the beginning of every class, at least once in the middle of class, and at the end of every class, because you don't know if the next teacher's going to do it. So you might as well give them a head start by getting the kids a little bit stretched with them. Doesn't matter how old they are. I say kids, they could be 8 years old, they could be 18, they could be 80. Every student needs a little bit of movement. And in a normal classroom situation, they get that. They don't in front of a screen, and nor do you. So I'd like you to follow me. Please do it. I don't know if you are. I love the thought that there are going to be people all over the world doing this at the same time. It gives a sort of collective sense of belonging, I hope. It should take us about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. Please don't do anything that your body doesn't want you to do. If you feel any kind of pain or any kind of tension, stop at that point and just bring it back a little bit. Try to follow the activity, but don't put your health at risk, okay? So follow me. I hope you can hear me. I have to leave my microphone on the table. I'm going to get my timer started, and I want you to stand up, obviously. First thing to do, relax yourself, get your arms down by your side, look at your shoulders a bit, get yourself standing comfortably, make sure your spine's nice and straight. I want you to follow me. Raise your arms up in the air, bring your palms together. I think I need to come back a little bit further. There we go. Bring your palms together. Bring your left arm down onto your leg and lean over to the left-hand side. Feel the stretch in the right-hand side of your body. Lean as far as you can comfortably. Hold it for a second. Come back up. Drop your right arm down. Bring your left arm up. Lean over to the right with your left arm over your head, touching your ear if you can, pushing your hand down your leg until it touches your knee if you can. And come back up to center. Now what you need to do is take your hands, put them on the small of your back to support yourself. This is known as a supportive back bend. And lean back, trying to push your hips out too much. Lean your back, push your head up, look up at the ceiling, feel your back kind of release some of the tension from hunching forward over your computer screen all day. Hold it for a minute, again, only as far as you can comfortably. And then gently use your hands to push yourself back up. Now we're going to do what I call a tall stretch. I need to come back a little bit further. I hope you can still hear me. You're going to lift your hands up above your head. And you're going to come around in circles like this. Really stretch your hands up. Come around in circles. And the very last thing, you usually do that for a bit longer. The very last thing is neck roll with funny face. This is brilliant. For releasing a bit of tension. You've been talking all day, your face is a bit tense because you've been staring at the screen. So I want you to roll your neck at the same time as doing a movement with your mouth, like, oh, wow. Open and close your mouth. Exercise your jaw. There we go. And that's a nice way to break some of the routine in a class and to give your kids an opportunity to move. If you're interested in this topic, there's loads of videos on YouTube, all sorts of stretches you can do that increase blood flow to the brain. And whatever happens, I'm sitting down now, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable than I was just a few seconds ago. And then to the dynamics part. Now, this is the most tricky part of all because, like it or not, and you're probably not going to like it when I say it like this, there's infinite competition. I mean, we're competing with these YouTube stars that have whole production teams behind them. And why are we competing with them? And you say, it's not a competition, Nick. Well, it kind of is. In a standard classroom, your students have no choice. I mean, it's you in a class. It's a situation we identify with learning. I go into the class, it is what it is. My teacher's there and I'm used to it. In the situation we're in now, the people you're teaching are very often using the very same screen for their classes that they were just using a few minutes ago for Minecraft or for watching some of these absolutely incredible YouTubers with these super slick videos and, you know, wow, and it's amazing, and there's graphics and there's dancing and singing. In a way, because we are now appearing on the same screen, the contrast between them, all this amazingly produced stuff, and us becomes even more pronounced. I'm not saying we all have to turn ourselves into super duper YouTube stars, but do think about your style. The one thing that defines the popular people on YouTube, or even whether, you know, it's a video game, it has a certain style. So what's your style? You might be the serious, more sort of scientific type of YouTuber. Dress up for it. Put on a lab coat. Put on some sciencey glasses. I tend to be a little bit more dynamic and flamboyant, so I thought I'd put on my shirt today that's some kind of weird cow pattern camouflage. Maybe tomorrow I'll put on... You get the idea. What's your style? And the other thing is, when you begin class... Hi, good morning, kids. How you all doing today? No. Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I think Fred did it at the beginning. I thought it was brilliant. The way he said, hi, everybody, and welcome to the... Bit of energy, bit of dynamic. Are you having fun? Probably not. Nothing I would rather not do than spend all day teaching online. I don't know about you guys. I'd far rather be with my... So, I can either come in a bit, we're all here again and whatever, or I can come and act and play the part for a while. So, hi, guys. Okay, I'm running a bit short of time, so I need to move on a little bit quicker than I wanted to. But in terms of materials, whether you were using books, platforms, apps, guides, whatever before, still carry on using them, but just make sure that you're using them in the most dynamic way possible. So a book is probably the hardest one of all because you can't see it. So, open your book to page 56 and complete activity B. Make sure you're getting the kids to hold up their books, having a look at them, take photographs, send them in, compare. You can still do all of the other things that we do with peer support and evaluation amongst the kids just by holding something up to the screen. If you're using a platform, try to make sure that it gives you the ability to follow what's going on in real time, so that whilst they're doing the activity, you're there observing everything as it gets posted. The same with an app. Even better would be to use something like some kind of Google Doc. I don't know if you're how many of you would be using Google Docs, or Microsoft Teams works just as well. These are absolutely amazing resources to increase the dynamics and to ensure that we cover some of the 21st century skills or future skills around collaboration, for example. You can have 5, 10, 20, or even, God forbid, 30 people collaborating at the same time on the same document in real time, and you can be observing them and giving them feedback. So you don't need to say, go and write on a piece of paper and then show me. You can actually watch it happening in real time. And you can even subdivide the groups so that you can watch smaller amounts of work being done and give feedback. As I've mentioned before, regular changes of rhythm, intensity, and focus are very, very important, as we've been doing through this presentation, taking them on a walk around your space, getting them to change space if that's possible where they are. I don't know about you, but when I teach, I love taking my students outside every now and again. It really changes the dynamic of class. If that's something you enjoy doing, you can still take them outside, explain to them, or if it's at school, write to the parents. We want them to, if possible, go outside. Is there a balcony? Is there a rooftop? Is there a garden? Is there, how can we change the rhythm, intensity, and focus? The most important parts of this are rhythm and style. What is your style? Are you the serious science teacher? Are you the wild dynamic teacher? Are you the singing and dancing teacher? Whatever it is, really play up that style, inflate that style. Be as crazy as you like, or be as serious as you like, but make sure that your students know who you are and what to expect when you're there. Okay, activity number 3. Remember the photos from earlier? What I would like you to do now is one of 2 things. You will have 90 seconds. I would like you to either post the photographs that's the selfie and the one of your pet or your view or whatever. Post them to Instagram or to Twitter using the hashtag SBS Pearson event, as you should be seeing on the screen right now. If you don't have Instagram or Twitter, or you don't feel comfortable posting these photographs to Instagram or Twitter, you can email them to me right now at nickperkins@me.com, or you can even WhatsApp me. This is my WhatsApp. It'll come straight through to my phone, which is here with me now, at +57 316 465 8672. And you have 90 seconds to do that, and we will have a look at them a little bit later. So please do that now. Even if only 1 or 2 people do it, it's going to be brilliant to see where you are and what you're doing at this exact moment in time. So 90 seconds starting now. Just a few more seconds. This is lovely. I've got loads of people WhatsApping me and emailing me. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you to everybody who's done that already. Anyone who hasn't, I'm still here. You can still email me, WhatsApp me. This is absolutely brilliant. I've got loads. Fantastic. I shouldn't be doing this, right? I should have my telephone on mute and no notifications. And that's what I would usually do in class. But when I'm going to do this, this is brilliant. So that's 90 seconds. Keep on sending them if you can. And I will show as many as I can later on. And those that I can't show, I will hashtag and upload to my Twitter so you can check the hashtag later on. And I'll remind you what that is in just a moment. Okay, and finally, because I've only got, I think, 6 minutes left of my talking time, and then we have some questions, which reminds me, if you have any questions, any comments, positive or negative, please do put them into the chat or the comments, depending on the way that you're watching this. My colleague Fred at SBS will be checking all of the comments, and he is going to choose some common themes, and we're gonna have a question and answer session in about 6 or 7 minutes time. So please post any questions you have to the comments box, and Fred will extract the ones that he thinks are most relevant to the situation that he and you are teaching in at the moment. So very, very quickly, teaching future skills online. What's this all about? Well, whether you're trying to teach science, technology, engineering, art and design, or mathematics, i.e. looking at a STEAM approach, whether you're taking a 4Cs approach, whether you're looking at CLIL as a way of introducing cross-curricular and future skills relevance into your teaching, it's always important to make this as practical and as hands-on as possible, but nowadays, in the situation we're in, teaching and learning online, it is more important than ever before that every single future skills-based activity or cross-curricular STEAM CLIL activity is as hands-on as possible. And I think in general, right, reading activities, great. A lot of older or higher language level future skills activities are going to involve reading and analysis, especially when we're looking at things like critical thinking. We do a lot of reading and interpretation of reading. However, if you find yourself in a situation of saying, now open your book and read in an online class, really stop. Just stop. Obviously, if you're talking about little children, there's a place to be had for reading out loud and more dynamic activities around reading. But, flip your classroom. You've had to, like it or not. The reading, all of those kind of things get done outside. The hands-on, it's anything that you do in an online class related to future skills, and especially around interpretation, critical thinking, collaboration, it's got to be hands-on. And apart from anything else, you're in the kids' homes effectively. That's brilliant. Nobody can say that they forgot to bring the corn flour, the maizena as we call it here, to do an oobleck in English class, because they're at home. You can't forget what's in your kitchen. Doing something on science about germinating lentils, well, you just walk to your kitchen and germinate those lentils. So make it as hands-on as possible. I know that Jade Felix is coming up next, and he's really going to focus on STEAM. So I don't think I need to. He's a great presenter, wonderful guy, incredibly knowledgeable. So I will leave him to talk about more specific activities. But just to say, make it hands-on, got to be hands-on. And finally, let's take a look at what's going on. I'm going to have to, Fred, by the way, I'll be back with you in about 3 minutes. We'll take 3 to 5 minutes max. Just have a very, very quick look. I think you can see my screen. Oh, look. There we go. This is what people have posted. Cats. Let me show you, actually, for the cat people. I went while we were talking. I almost couldn't find her. There you go. That's my cat who was sitting on my bed. So cat's popular. Is that a dog licking its nose? I think we've got a dog licking its nose. And who's this here? DJ Bok 42. Thank you very much for that. Absolutely fantastic. It's a very nice set of curtains as well. Definitely better than a grey background. Looking at Twitter, we'll just refresh that and see if anything's come up on Twitter. Oh, there we go. William from Lima's up there on Twitter. Hi, William. Very nice. We've got somebody with a cat in their cat basket. There we go. Boxes as well. That's brilliant. Best thing about lockdown, you order everything in loads of boxes. My cat has got a box gymnasium. It's absolutely incredible. Lovely. Who's this here? Don't know who. Carl Widows. Hi. Now, that's nice. Always nice to have some books behind you. I don't know if you do it, Carl, but when I also have a very small study in my home, and sometimes I have to teach in the study, and I kind of think about which books to put behind me. So maybe you want to have a think about that. Very nice. Lovely. Thank you very much. I would recommend closing the curtain, though, on the wardrobe. Hope you don't mind me saying that, but tell me in the comments if you do. And let's have a very quick look. Freddie, about 2 minutes. I'm just going to be holding... Technical team, can we have my video a little bit bigger than the presentation? Because I want to show you some of the things that I got on WhatsApp. Oh my word. I've had over 100 people write to me on WhatsApp. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody. We're not going to have time to look at everything, but Leela, look at this. Isn't that amazing? I don't know if you can see that. I think you can. Isn't that beautiful? People writing to me from all over Latin America and the world. And this is where we get into how we can dynamize online teaching and learning. We do have to be careful with the younger children, but talk to their parents. We want to dynamize things. Can you imagine doing this in class? A little show and tell, or what's your mum doing now? What's your dad doing? What's your brother or sister doing? Virtual tours of your home. Let's have a look at your, turn your camera around and show us your Minecraft, whatever it is. This is amazing. I'm really, really emotional about all the messages I've received. Unfortunately, I don't have time to show you anymore. I'm just going to choose another one at random. I've got one. Oh, I think this is a dog. Always good to show a dog picture. Who's this? I don't know who this person is yet. I will have a look later, but look at the picture of that dog. Isn't that a beautiful way to finish an event like this? I would recommend that later on today, I will upload, I promise it might take me a while because I've got literally over 100. But I will upload the photos to my Twitter feed and I'll tag them all with SBS Pearson events. So you can check that later or tomorrow. You can see all of the people that were together with you today and me. Thank you all very much for attending. Once again, thanks to SBS and Pearson for organizing this. Thank you for joining me, giving up part of your Friday, late afternoon, early evening to be here with me. And if you would like to get in touch, you now have my phone number, but you can also find my other contact details at nickperkins.com/contact. Thank you very much for listening. And Fred, I believe that you will be coming back with some questions. I think you're on mute, Fred.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm back. Everybody can hear me, right? Yes.
I can hear you now. How are you doing?
Oh, cool. Oh, well. So the first question what we got is Ms. Luz Unigo. She's asking is, what is the best size? What is the best group size?
Well, that's a tricky one. I think it's for you. I would say, I mean, if we're looking at an ideal world, if you could just choose and do whatever you wanted, somewhere between 3 and 5. 5 works pretty well. I think if you think, how many people can you see large enough to see their facial expressions on the screen at the same time? It's somewhere between 3, perhaps 6, if you've got a nice big screen. The smaller the better, but it depends on your teaching situation. I know some teachers who have classes of 40 students, some even more. With 40 students, that gets a little bit tricky. I mean, you can't really divide them down to less than perhaps 7, 8, maybe even 10. Otherwise, the learning time is going to be so short as to then become a problem in and of itself. So have a look at the number of students you have. If you're in an ideal world and you have 20 students in your classroom, wouldn't we all love that? Divide them into 5 groups of 4 or four groups of 5. 4 groups of 5 with an hour gives them 15 minutes each of one-to-one time with you, and another 45 minutes where they can either be interacting with each other or doing other activities. So thanks for your question. Great question.
Okay. The next question what we got is from Angel Pacheco. Really nice exercise, but to do with students, would they follow?
The yoga exercise, or are you aware of?
Yeah, that one.
You would be surprised. They, in my experience at least, they do. It can become a little bit difficult to manage, a little bit unruly, especially when you're talking about young children. They get all excited, and give it a try. That's the only thing I'd say. Give it a try. Explain to them why you're doing this. You might be surprised after they've been sitting down for hours before you. They might look forward to this. And you just explain, guys, I need you to really focus, follow me. When I say time to stop, stop, and then we'll do it again. And that's always the promise. If you follow me now, we'll do it again.
Okay. Next question is Gonzalo Concha. How do you split a 90-minute session? What stages and timing are considered?
I guess it depends on what your teaching objective is for that particular day. 90-minute lesson is difficult. It's a long time to be online. I spend probably 30 to 50% of my life online, even when I'm not in a COVID pandemic. And 90 minutes is difficult. I think the only thing that you can do is to have a look at what your objectives are. You may want to try, with a 90-minute class, you may actually want to try some quiet time. I know it sounded like I was criticizing reading, and I probably was a little bit too harsh on reading. But with a 90-minute class, I would suggest building in even perhaps a sort of 10-minute quiet reading time in the middle. You'd be looking at something in the region of, I tend to be quite uniform, or quite sort of, I look for symmetry. So I would look at 25% blocks. Just trying to do some maths in my head while I'm talking, and I became an English teacher because I'm terrible at maths. So 90 by half, 45. So it's about a 20-minute initial presentation section. And by presentation, I mean people talking about what they've been doing, some kind of enhanced show and tell, photograph from yesterday, your favorite YouTube video. So some kind of 20-minute introduction session. And you would gradually begin to introduce the topic of the class. 20 minutes of a focus on one particular skill, could be grammar, could be reading, could be listening. Try to split it into sections of no more than 20 minutes. So I hope that gives you something to think about.
Okay. Julio Cesar Abanto Torres. What is under your laptop? Do you use it regularly?
What, sorry, please repeat the question, Freddie.
What is under your laptop? Below your laptop. Do you use it regularly?
Yes, I do. Let me show you. It is literally.
Okay. We lost you. No audio.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay.
Headphones.
Now, yes.
I was saying that it's a DeWalt drill box, which may make you laugh, but works for me. It's the perfect height. Yeah, I use it all the time. I mean, I move around my house constantly. So today I'm in my dining room area, and I need to use this box. In my study, I have a special, like a wooden shelf that the laptop sits on top of. If I'm in another place, just a few books, pile up some books.
Okay. Last but not least, Apasa Waman Isaac. the question is, how do you deal with invisible students, those ones who seem to be in class but never answer any questions when instructor asks?
Yeah, online learning, isn't it brilliant for the student who usually sits at the back of the classroom? They don't even now need to pretend that they're awake looking at you. They can just disappear into the ether. The only way, was it Isaac, the person who asked that, Freddie, did you say?
Apasa Waman, Isaac.
Yeah. What I would say is that's where it becomes key to reduce your class size. The invisible student can remain invisible when there are more people than can fit on your screen. So, you're sort of trying to scroll through all of the different thumbnails and you finally get to the one at the end. But if the student's really switched on and really invisible, they're going to realize that that's what you're doing, and they're suddenly going to be all awake and attentive. So reduce the class size. Also, you hopefully are teaching students that have come from pre-COVID. So you hopefully know who to look out for, asking them direct questions, giving them an opportunity to provide input. I hope you would have an idea of one of the motivating factors of the invisible student. Is it a video game? Is it a YouTube star? Is it a book? Give them that as their task, and at a sort of surprise moment of class, it's like, invisible student, it's your time. Show us that video, or do the dance, or show us the the TikTok, whatever it happens to be. Try to find something that directly focuses in on them, that they can't ignore because they love it, and they can't ignore because you directly ask them. And then, just to go back to what I said at the beginning, the smaller that you can make the individual teaching session group, the less that they can be invisible.
I just got the last questions there, because we have one more minute, and then you can just wrap up this part.
Yeah.
And Diana Atención, she asked, which skill will be in the future the most reliable after TIC?
Oh, how long is a piece of string? Do you know that saying? How long is a piece of string? It means that it's an endless question that none of us really know the answers to. I'm going to deflect the question, which is not necessarily what you were hoping for, but I'm going to deflect the question by saying, do you remember a few years ago, there was this whole buzz and lots of people were saying, oh, we're preparing our students for jobs that don't even exist yet. And a lot of research was done on that. And if you actually just go and Google how many jobs today didn't exist 10 years ago. And 10 years ago was when, 10 to 15 years ago was when people were saying about, oh, the jobs that don't yet exist. Complete nonsense, absolute rubbish. There have been very few jobs, and we're talking only 15 years, I guess, but very few new things that didn't exist before exist now that we weren't able to prepare our students for because we didn't know what they were. So I'd say, to give you an answer, probably coding and a coding mindset, which means an analytical, problem-solving mindset where you collaboratively solve problems and reiterate and retest and reiterate, and this constant process of improvement and renewal. I think whether you're actually coding, actually writing computer code, or whether you're working in another field, I think this becomes more and more important as the world moves on, because things will change faster and faster and faster, and therefore it's building in this ability to analyze, discuss, solve, apply, test, retest, reanalyze.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate your presentation.
Fred, thank you so much for your amazing hosting. Teachers, colleagues across the world, thank you so much for being here. I really mean it. Get in touch. We're living in difficult times. I would love nothing more than to be able to give you support and advice. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks a lot, SBS. Thank you, Pearson. Over to you, Fred.
Well, now to continue with the presentation, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have the second presentation. We want to welcome NatGeo, as well known as learning publishing house in our country and in the world. And to get more information about them, please, I invite you to watch a short video about them. Tim, let's go, please. Right away. Let's play. Okay, go.
At National Geographic Learning, we serve English learners by reflecting the mission and work of National Geographic in our programs. We are inspired by Alexander Graham Bell's original goal for the magazine to be about the world and all that is in it. And we try to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life. If you look at our learning programs, you'll see that they're like workbook versions of National Geographic, filled with incredible photography, fascinating stories, and the real work of explorers. Explorers in particular resonate with learners because the explorer's search for knowledge and understanding is the very essence of education. At National Geographic Learning, we believe it's an incredible world, and we want to share that with students. We want students to be filled with awe and curiosity by amazing photographs and stories of their world and all that is in it. Because we know that a curious student is a motivated student, and we believe that a motivated student will be a successful student. With our programs, we're always mindful that we're not just teaching vocabulary and grammar. We're opening up the world to students who have otherwise not experienced it. Students in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Eastern Europe, literally everywhere. We want to help these students experience their world and develop their voices. Besides having great National Geographic content, we also work with TED Talks, and we are TED's exclusive partner in English language education. TED Talks are the single most widely sourced videos for English learners, popular both because of the ideas in the talks and because of the natural English used by both native and non-native TED speakers. Ultimately, the incredible content we have from National Geographic and TED enables us to develop programs that are relevant, motivating, and powerful learning tools that bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life.
All right, coming back live. Now we're going to introduce our second speaker this afternoon, our prestigious international speaker, Jair Felix, with a topic, teaching English skills through exploration of STEAM topics. Let's know a bit about Jair Felix. National Geographic Learning Senior ELT Academic Consultant for Latin America. Has a BA in TFL from Universidad Autónoma de Sinaloa in Mexico, and a postgraduate degree in Teachers Development from the College of St. Mark and St. John, Plymouth, UK. Jair has been involved in language teaching and teacher training for over 25 years and has conducted workshops on various topics such as lesson planning, discourse analysis for language teachers, action research, educational technologies, and 21st century skills, among others. Jair holds a diploma in teaching English for specific purposes and an e-tutoring certificate from the British Council. He's a frequent presenter at ELT conferences throughout Latin America. So please welcome to TDC, Jair Felix. Good afternoon, sir. It's all of you.
Thank you, Fred. Good afternoon. I hope you guys can hear me and you can see my presentation. Fantastic. Very good. And again, it is my great honor to have the opportunity to be with you today. As you heard before, my name is Jair Felix, and I'm extremely pleased and thankful with SBS with the opportunity I have now to get in touch with you. I'm a big fan of Peru and South America, and I've visited Peru several times, endless times, because of my work as an academic consultant for National Geographic Learning. So it is fantastic that even in these times of pandemic and lockdown, I have the opportunity to be with you today. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And it gives me also a great pleasure to have the opportunity to share a bit on my insights on the importance of combining English language practice with STEAM topics. And that's the main purpose of our presentation today, to discuss a bit and to make you a bit more familiar with the importance of incorporating STEAM topics into the practice of English language teaching and learning. So I've called this presentation Teaching English Skills Through Explorations of STEAM Topics. And before we get to talk about this, and since I don't have the opportunity to interact with you live through mics, I'm gonna pose you with a challenge. I'm gonna have a challenge for you, and that challenge is quite simple. Can I ask you to answer this poll for me, as I'm interested in knowing where you guys are currently teaching, or what's your teaching background, what's your teaching experience. So the only thing I need for you to do is simply scan the QR code that you have on your screen right now. Scan this code and answer the poll there. And if you don't have a scanner, or you cannot scan this QR code, simply open your browser and go to www.menti.com and use this numerical code. It's 7973820 in order to give me your answers. Actually, in this particular time, tell me where you guys are currently teaching, or what's your teaching background. In a minute, I'm gonna open the poll. I'm gonna go to Menti and see what your answers are. So can I ask you again, and just a few seconds, scan this code. You can use your cell phone for this. You can use your phone, simply open up your camera and scan the QR code. And if you cannot do that, simply open your browser, go to menti.com, and using this code 7973820, give me your teaching background. Where are you teaching? Can you do that for me, please? Fantastic. Okay. So let's take a look live at Menti. I'm gonna stop sharing my my PowerPoint for a second, and I'm gonna open my Menti presentation live. Oh, I see. Very good. Lots of people have already answered my poll. That's fantastic. I have 75 people already. Very good. And so there's, we're getting close to 100 now. Fantastic. Very good. So this is one of the reasons I love Menti, because you can actually see answers live, and you can actually interact with answers in a live way, in a very vivid way. So most of you are teaching teens and young adults. We have a majority of you teaching young adults and adults. But I have over 100 teachers here saying that they teach young learners and teens, and a fewer of you are teaching very young learners, that is like kindergartners, whereas the majority of you are teaching young adults, or a mix between young learners and teens. That's very, very interesting. And thank you to the 140 teachers that have already answered. And the poll's going to remain open for the rest of the session, so you can come and give me your answer whenever you feel like it. So thank you for this. And this is going to help me a lot throughout the session today. Thank you for this. Let me just then go back to my original presentation. Very good. So as I mentioned before, the main topic of today's session is talking about this need for combining English language teaching practice with STEAM topics. And so I thought that in order to begin at some sort of like a common ground of understanding, let's spend the first minutes of our session today defining STEAM and what it has to do with English language teaching. So the concept of STEAM has to do with an approach that combines the teaching of content coming from different sources and dealing with different subject areas such as science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So those are the 5 subject areas, the 5 curricular areas that make up the STEAM concept. So as you can see, this is more like an acronym using the first letter of every subject. And again, we have science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And so this 5 subject areas, or this 5 curricular areas, have traditionally been put together in order to provide students at schools with a more comprehensive and closer to real practice instruction. But it's not that often that we include English language practice in that very broad concept of STEAM. In other words, you can typically see science, technology, engineering, art, and math on one big bucket, let's say, of subjects that are presented particularly to younger students, but at some degree also to teenagers and adults. So you typically see, for example, that the science teacher and the math teacher get together and collaborate in projects, or they compare and they contrast their syllabus and their content, and then they make decisions on any particular project maybe that they can collaborate together. And you can see the art teacher, getting together with the engineering teacher or the crafting teacher in order to design projects on their own. And then English language practice sits typically apart. And so what I advocate for, and the reason why I have put this presentation together, is because I am a true believer on the advantages and benefits of combining English language teaching with content from the STEAM bucket. In other words, the proposal, it's quite simple. As you teach the language, as you're concentrated on English language teaching, why not enriching that practice with maybe a reading or a project or a video or a conversation that comes from the STEAM bucket? How about having a discussion on a scientific topic, or analyzing a new app, a new technology app, or talking about bridges and constructions, or maybe analyzing a masterpiece or a new song, or doing some math problems as we practice the language further. So that is the actual concept of combining STEAM and English language teaching. It doesn't actually mean that you need to stop teaching what you've traditionally taught in English. It doesn't mean that you should stop teaching the grammar or the vocabulary or practicing the pronunciation or the listening, the reading, the speaking, and the writing. No. It's actually enriching such practice of the language skills and the systems with content that it's real, content that it's tangible, content that it's accessible, and that comes from that STEAM bucket that we mentioned before. At the end, you gotta accept that scientists, engineers, technologists, artists, and mathematicians all need language skills. They might be experts on their fields, on each of their fields, but one thing they have in common is that at some point during the development of their careers, they gotta use language. And what language is the one they typically use? The most global and most popular language there is right now, which is English. And so for this, they need also to develop an appreciation and an understanding of human communication. And the most logic and ideal tool for communicating among humans is language. And again, they also need strong writing abilities in order to, write their essays and describe whatever the new discover or the new project they've been working on. So scientists, engineers, technologists, artists, and mathematicians, they all need language skills. They all need human communication, and they all need strong writing abilities. And aren't these the things we have specialty on teaching? Aren't we specialists on teaching language skills, teaching communication, and teaching strong writing, speaking, reading, and listening skills or abilities? So it is only logical that this need for combining STEAM topics and English language teaching came into your classrooms, particularly now that we have the opportunity, as Nick mentioned before, of enriching the practice, the STEAM practice at home. Because kids and students in general, they no longer have the excuse of, I didn't bring the whatever the material I was asked to bring today for this project. They're at home, right? So they have no excuse anymore. So STEAM and ELT fit nicely together, building upon and reinforcing the combined skills and content of each through cross-curricular and transversal activities. That is, you're going to keep on practicing the language, the linguistic component of your subject. That is, you're going to keep on teaching the grammar, the vocabulary, the pronunciation. You're going to challenge your students to collaborate by means of speaking and listening and reading and writing. But the content that they're going to use for such interactions, it's not your typical, tell me what you did last Saturday, or where are you going on your next vacation, which is needed, it's fine, but it's not enough for English language interaction in this globalized village that we live in right now. For your students to be considered competent users of English at a global stage, they gotta go beyond the traditional contexts that are presented in an English language classroom and use real world content in order to express their thoughts, expose their ideas cohesively and coherently. And there's nothing as realistic, as tangible as science, engineering, technology, arts, and numbers. That's the way we live nowadays. So you gotta remember that globalization, the digital revolution, mass migration, the prospect of climate instability, and now the COVID pandemic are triggering new concerns and demanding a new kind of graduate. That is, the traditional approach or methodologies that you followed for teaching English are still somehow needed, but no longer enough. There's a need for more because we're living now on a different world, on a world that it's global, that it's digitally revolutionized, that actually experiences mass migration on daily basis. We have the prospect, and we actually live through the reality of climate instability. And to top it all, we're in the middle of a pandemic and a lockdown. So all of these realities are triggering new concerns, obviously, but are also demanding a new kind of student. A student that's capable of navigating through these challengeful times in English with success. And for that, I think bringing the STEAM bucket into your English language teaching practice is essential. Why? Because through that, you help your students not only learn English, but also develop 21st century skills. Maybe you're familiar with the concept of the 4 Cs: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Well, nowadays, because of all these things that we've mentioned, globalization, digital revolution, mass migration, climate instability, and the pandemic, the concept of the 4 Cs has been expanded in order to accommodate new realities and new needs of students, or to cater for the new needs of students in these times that we're living in. So we're still talking about the importance of helping our students develop critical thinking as they learn and practice English, but it's no longer just the thinking, but it's now also critical doing. That is, helping our students as they learn and practice English to solve problems, to do some research, to analyze, to manage projects, etc., etc. So we're calling this critical thinking and doing. We also want for our students, as they learn and practice English, to develop creativity further. That is, to create new knowledge, to look for best fits, to design solutions, to become competent storytellers so they can express their ideas and what's up here in their minds in a cohesive and coherent way. We also need that our students, as they learn and practice English, also learn and feel comfortable with the collaboration and interactions with other people. So we need for our students, as they learn and practice English, we need for them to collaborate, to cooperate, to compromise, to reach consensus, to work on community building projects, etc., etc. And because of the role of English as a truly global language, the need for cross-cultural understanding is a reality in 21st century practice of the language. So you present English not only based on native speaking contexts and geographical locations, but rather you learn and practice English across diverse ethnic, knowledge, and organizational cultures. With all this in mind, our students are going to develop stronger, richer abilities for communicating their thoughts and their ideas cohesively and coherently. They're going to be capable of crafting and understanding messages and using media effectively, right? And of course, computing, and not only the effective use of computers, but rather the use of electronic information and knowledge tools, having the ability to navigate through the web, for example, to develop projects, to do research online in English successfully. And last but not least, and this was added because of this pandemic, the need for career and learning self-reliance. In other words, help your students develop abilities as they learn and practice English. Help them develop abilities for managing change, or understand lifelong learning, understanding that you never stop learning and you should have the attitude for iteration, as Nick was mentioning before, and career redefinition whenever needed, whenever hit by a pandemic, for example. So all of these skills, I feel, can be more richly be developed by the combination of English language teaching practices and STEAM concepts. So the idea is that we start incorporating STEAM into your English classes in the most logical and natural ways. Because at the end, for example, we typically teach reading skills when we teach English. How about incorporating STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math concepts into your English classes by doing informational reading? Because at the end, this is an objective that we all typically have in our programs. We all want for our students to read and comprehend complex literary and informational texts independently and proficiently. And the more contextualized and content-based those informational readings get, the bigger the chances for our students to navigate through them successfully and confidently. So one way of incorporating STEAM into your English classes could be using informational readings. Maybe identifying and evaluating arguments. We're always doing listening practice, video watching practice in our classrooms when we teach and practice the language, because we want for our students to be able to delineate and evaluate the argument and specific claims in a discourse. Could be a written text, but also an audio or a video, including the validity of the reasoning as well as the relevance and sufficiency of the evidence. So you go beyond the typical read and answer your questions or listen or watch a video and answer questions. You're incorporating critical thinking, creative thinking, discussions, debates in which your students can identify and evaluate arguments successfully. When you incorporate topics on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math into your English practice, this identification and evaluation of arguments becomes far more accessible and tangible. And of course, we're always aiming nowadays, particularly because of the pandemic, we are using technology nonstop. And we want for our students to use technology, and of course, including the internet, not only to attend your session passively, but rather to produce and publish writing, for example, or maybe podcasts, recordings, videos, and to interact and collaborate with others. When you use STEAM topics with technology, magic happens. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples in a minute. And then number 4, projects. PBL, TBL, project-based learning, the task-based approach have been extremely popular among the English language teaching community for years. When you enhance PBL or task-based approach with projects, your students learn by actively engaging in real-world and personally meaningful projects. So these are just some ways and benefits of incorporating topics from the fields of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math into the practice of English. And some other benefits include that, for example, enhancing your curriculum with some engaging STEAM activities and projects can benefit students in a variety of ways, from increasing critical thinking to giving them hands-on, real-world learning experiences in your classroom. Pairing STEAM with ELT can also appeal to a variety of learners, from reluctant readers to those with literacy difficulties or disabilities who may be more eager to participate when they're able to learn English concepts through science, technology, engineering, art, and math, because they see a meaning, they see the relevance, they see a purpose in the practice. And the more you embed STEAM into your curriculum, the more you'll find that the possibilities are endless. So these are, again, some benefits of STEAM in ELT. Now, let's take a look at an ELT plus STEAM project. I'm going to show you what I've done in order to develop an approach that combines English language teaching best practices, and I would even say traditional settings like the vocabulary teaching using flashcards or the grammar practice doing matching and filling the gap exercises, together with a very rich content-based STEAM project. And the context of our project, it's gonna be no other than the ancient Egypt. As you can see right now, I'm combining a bit of science because we're going to be talking about archaeology, and a bit of engineering because we're going to be talking about also digging for artifacts and fossils, and even some art because we're going to be talking about museums, and math because we're going to be using numbers that those archaeologists have to use. So it's a very comprehensive project, but it's again contextualized in the field of archaeology in Egypt. Okay, so let's take a look at how this project combining archaeology and English language teaching actually was put together. And I'm gonna begin with the big part, which is the language teaching. So let's say, for example, that we are teaching a unit of instruction, no matter the age, even if we're teaching young kids or we're teaching teens or we're teaching adults, we typically reach a level, a unit of teaching in which we have to teach simple past, both regular and irregular, right? But that is a grammatical structure that we all have to teach at some point, particularly at the high beginning level of proficiency. So that is the linguistic background for my project. I have presented, I have done, if you may, some traditional grammar teaching with simple past, and now I'm incorporating the STEAM practice into that linguistic objective. And so my first step, it's not going to be just literally jump into the archaeology aspect, but rather I'm going to do a quick review and a quick practice, final practice on the grammatical notion that I had previously presented. So for example, I'm going to ask my students things like, all right, what did you do yesterday? And so I can gather answers. I can verify if they're using the right verb tense, if they're using the right regular or irregular conjugation of the verb. Maybe they're going to tell me things like, I went to a movie, or things like, for example, I did my homework. When did you did your homework yesterday? And they can tell you, I did my homework in the afternoon, or things like that. So you practice the grammatical structure as a way for paving the understanding, paving your students' understanding of the practice. Where did you go last Sunday? I went to the park with my friend. And so we keep on practicing simple past with a very visual approach. This is something that also Nick mentioned before, the importance of using visuals in the interaction. Who did you eat lunch with yesterday? I ate lunch with my sister. So we're now combining, we're now using irregular verbs in the past. Who did you eat lunch with yesterday? I ate lunch with my sister. Or, did you watch TV last night? Yes, no questions in simple past. No, I didn't. I read a book, etc., etc. So you get the idea, right? We're pretty much doing a regular grammatical practice, right? Did you walk to school last Friday? Yes, I did, etc., etc. So once we're done with the revision, the recycling, the further practice of the key grammatical structure we're going to be using in our STEAM project, let's now do some teaching on vocabulary. Vocabulary becomes essential on the STEAM project because you don't usually teach STEAM vocabulary on your typical English language textbooks, right? You don't teach vocabulary or a lot of vocabulary about science or engineering or technology or arts or math. So if you are incorporating STEAM, vocabulary needs to have a special place on the teaching and practice of the lexis or the key target language for the project. So for example, I'm going to introduce vocabulary, but I'm going to contextualize it in the topic of my STEAM project, which is archaeology. So I'm going to ask my students, again, this is no matter the age. You can use a project like this with young primary level kids or with college students. I'm going to introduce them to a National Geographic archaeologist. Her name's Nora Shockey. So I'm going to tell my students, this is Nora Shockey. Let's meet her. Nora Shockey is a National Geographic archaeologist. And notice how I've colored the key target word differently. So this is the key word that I'm introducing right now. So Nora Shockey is a National Geographic archaeologist. What do archaeologists do? They work outside in the field. They go to sites and caves, etc., etc. And they also work inside as they have to take their samples and findings into labs in order to analyze them and examine them further. They look for old things. This is typically what archaeologists do. They look for old things and they study the things they find. And of course, all of the above at the same time. So if this was a multiple choice activity, what would be the right answer? Is all of the above, right? They work outside and inside, they look for old things, and they study the things they find. Okay, so I'm contextualizing the practice and I'm introducing the key target vocabulary for my students. And now I can start teaching the words that are gonna be key and essential for my project. We said archaeologists before, right? And an example of that. So I show my students the word in context. The key word is archaeologist, so I can say things like Nora Shockey is an archaeologist. Another key word that I'm going to be using in my project is dig. So I can exemplify this by saying things like people dig holes to plant flowers. And these images become particularly powerful when you're teaching online at a distance, because in that way, you make sure that all of your students are seeing the image and linking the key target word with the visual representation of it. When you're in a traditional classroom, you can use a lot of body language and mimics for that. But when you are restricted to the size of a camera, for example, those images become extremely useful, very powerful. Site, another key target word. Site, and I'm going to exemplify it by saying things like, the scientist studied the site near the volcano. And notice how I'm starting to incorporate the key grammatical concept that we reviewed before into the vocabulary practice. So I'm now saying, the scientist studied the site near the volcano. Artifact. You can see many artifacts from around the world in museums. Ancient. There are a lot of ancient buildings in Italy. And so after I'm done, and I can go on and use as many vocabulary terms as I think are needed for my students to fully understand the higher scope of my project, of my upcoming STEAM project. And then once I'm done presenting the vocabulary, I can have my students work with it. And I'm gonna, for example, challenge them with something like this. In 60 seconds, write down the names of as many things from long ago you can see in museums. Ready? And then they can simply start scratching notes down, and in 60 seconds, they're gonna give me the things that people typically see at a museum. So we're not gonna work on this activity right now. This is just an example for you to start understanding what sort of practice you can do after the vocabulary presentation we just did. And then if you want to work through this in some sort of a contest, you can ask your students which pair got the most, and you can have them do a show and tell sort of practice in the classroom. Okay? Now, transitioning into a more productive practice. I can ask my students, now that they have reviewed the grammar and they have learned the vocabulary, I can start demanding for production. And so I can ask my students things like, what do you know about archaeologists, for example? what do you know about artifacts, right? And so let's review. And I can have, as I mentioned before, a typical match or fill in the gaps exercise to review. And so, for example, my students can tell me that an archaeologist is interested in history. An archaeologist chooses a site, to study very carefully. We dig holes in the ground. And artifact is very, very old, and ancient things are often broken. So I'm reviewing vocabulary by means of a regular language activity, which is, for example, a matching exercise or a fill in the gaps activity. So this is all, again, very typical of an English language classroom. Now then, I incorporate an even stronger item of context into my project. And I tell my students, you know, we've talked about Nora Shockey before. We've met Nora before. We know she's an archaeologist. She works inside and outside. She dig holes looking for ancient things and artifacts at different sites in the world. She actually specializes on archaeology sites in Egypt. She's actually from Egypt, and she has a special interest in doing archaeology research in her own country. So in order to learn a bit more about Nora and what she does, let's watch this little video. And video plays a key important role in the development of STEAM projects in English language classrooms, particularly nowadays that you deal with the teaching in the times of a pandemic. The video has become an even more powerful source of input because of the lockdown. So I can use videos like this, for example. Let me just play the video a bit for you. And I hope you can get to listen to it.
Have you ever heard of the pharaohs, the ancient kings and queens of Egypt? Do you know about King Tut, the famous boy king? Tut became king of Egypt when he was only 9 years old. King Tut and Queen Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, lived more than 2,000 years ago. Do you ever wonder about people who lived long before us? I do. I wonder what their lives were like. Hi, I'm Nora Shockey. I'm a National Geographic explorer. I'm also an archaeologist. Archaeologists are scientists who explore places where people lived thousands of years ago. Some archaeologists study famous buildings like the Egyptian pyramids. Other archaeologists study famous people like Queen Cleopatra. Or they study mummies like the preserved body of King Tut. Instead of kings and queens, I'm interested in ordinary people, people like you and me, who lived in ancient times many years ago. What was a typical day like for them? What did houses look like 2,000 years ago? What did people eat? I've always wanted to be an archaeologist. When I was 9 years old, I watched a video of the archaeologist Howard Carter excavating King Tut's underground tomb, the place where the Egyptian boy king was buried. In the video, the archaeologist was looking through a tiny hole in the wall with a candle. Someone asked him, "Can you see anything?" He said, "Yes, wonderful things." When I saw the look on Howard Carter's face, I felt excited. I knew I wanted to explore places underground and be an archaeologist myself. So I started to watch more videos and read a lot about Egypt and other ancient civilizations. Learning about archaeology became my hobby, something I did for fun after school. Now, I am an archaeologist, and I lead my own digs in the Nile Delta of Egypt. Luckily, my home country is a great place to be an archaeologist. I work with a big team of people. There are artists, ceramicists, surveyors who map the site, and many other specialists. On my team, we all work together to excavate a site and analyze the objects we find. Those objects, called artifacts, help us understand our history. The objects you see in a museum are all clean and pretty. But my job is messy, especially in the Nile Delta, where there is a lot of water underground. When I find ancient objects, I follow a very organized process to document everything. First, I excavate the object from the ground very carefully so that I don't damage it. I also have to map the location of each object. Then, I label it and give the object a number. Finally, I take the object to the lab to analyze it. Many people think archaeologists spend all day digging in the dirt. It's true that I do some of my work outside in the field, but most of my work is done in a lab. I do research in my lab, write reports, and talk to other scientists who help me analyze the objects I find. But I have the most fun when I'm outside, excavating. Carefully digging for artifacts and structures underground in the dirt. Let me tell you about one of the coolest things I've found. I was excavating a tomb in Sudan, an African country south of Egypt. When we arrived, the site looked like an empty desert. There was only sand on the ground, with no modern buildings or villages. But there were amazing things hidden under the sand. After a couple of weeks of searching, my team and I found a skeleton, and it had a beautiful necklace on it. The necklace was made of a precious stone called lapis lazuli. That's one of my favorite stones, deep blue in color. I love my job. Learning about history from my digs helps me understand where human beings come from. I believe that the more we know about our history, the more we can learn about who we are today and how we're all related. If you're interested in history like me, that's great. Ask questions, do research, explore your city, explore your own backyard. Follow your passion, whatever it is. Learn as much as you can about the one thing that excites you the most. Dinosaurs, outer space, or anything else. From my experience, following your passion is the best way to make a big difference in the world.
Okay, so you have the opportunity to incorporate very powerful videos like this one that actually trigger a lot of discussions, debates, critical thinking, analysis, which are all skills that we talked about before. And if you have the possibility, you can combine video with reading, or maybe use one or the other, depending on the topic and the sources you have available. So for example, for this particular project, I'm combining the video we just watched of an actual archaeologist, and also a reading that I've called Lessons from History. And the topic is the same, and it's actually linked to one of the stories that Nora narrated in her video about how Howard Carter discovered King Tut's tomb in Egypt in the 1920s. So once I'm done contextualizing, reviewing the language, presenting it, I can do some final language practice in which I can verify my students' understanding of either the video or the reading or whatever the input I've worked in. And then the final step, and the most important one, is challenge them with a project. So this is all language practice and comprehension checking. But again, the final part is challenge your students with a project. And then in this project, they're going to put their language skills and their STEAM content into practice to devise an outcome. In this particular case, I have two different projects, one for younger kids and one for teens and adults. So let me just guide you through the project for younger kids, in which I can ask my students to work on a diary. And I'm going to challenge them to think of a civilization from long ago. They're going to write a title and heading on each page of a booklet, including topics like food, homes, clothes, jobs, etc. And so I'm going to challenge them to do some research. some online research, because remember, we're also incorporating the active use of digital tools and technology for exploration and critical thinking and searching development. So I'm going to challenge them to do some research and write a sentence about the civilization's food, homes, clothes, and jobs. I'm going to challenge them also to find photos or draw pictures for each heading. And at the end, they can, of course, glue those and write their information. And at the end, they present their ancient civilization booklet to the class. And they say one thing about these subjects. And they can work with a group for this. They can tell me a bit more about Nurshaki or maybe King Tut or history or Egypt in order to link the booklet project with the content that I presented before. So this is a very nice, hands-on, and simple, easy-to-do project that combines English language practice and STEAM content at a high level. Another possibility is challenge your older students, could be teens or maybe adults, to take action and invite them to do things if they want to learn more about history and technology. And for this, since they have a higher level of cognitive decision-making possibilities, I'm not going to even give them the project, but I'm going to give them options. One project can be research an important archaeological site. Another project could be do an interview and research a famous archaeologist and then do a role playing. Or maybe do a presentation on a lesson from history that is important today. And so they work through this project, they present their findings, and you can actually even assess their language performance through this STEAM-based project in your classroom. And with this, we have actually incorporated the best of both practices, English language teaching and STEAM, in a very tangible and motivating way. So I want to finish my presentation today by stating what Geoff Morgan said at TED Global almost 10 years ago, that I think it's even more of a fact nowadays. Thousands, possibly millions of students are really bored by schooling nowadays. School doesn't animate our students anymore. And the reason for that is because they want to do things. They want to get their hands dirty. They want education to be for real and about the real world. And I think that when you pair up, when you combine STEAM and ELT, you expose your students to the creative process. You offer meaningful collaboration. You increase critical thinking and provide a unique way to problem-solving practices. And you give all students hands-on learning experiences. So once again, give it a try and go crazy incorporating STEAM practices and topics into your English language teaching practice. Okay? Thank you very much for this. Oh, before I pass the mic to our SBS friends, let me just tell you that all of the videos and content that I used for exemplifying my project comes from a National Geographic Learning series called Exploration. So if you want to know more about explorations, get in touch with me and I'll tell you everything there is to know about this fantastic approach for enriching English language teaching and practice with the practice of STEAM concepts. Thank you very much. You have my contact details on your screen right now. Again, I truly appreciate the opportunity, and SBS, over to you now.
Okay, sir, we have some questions what we collected. And the first question what we got is from Jenny Isabel. So her question is this: how can I use STEAM with students from 5th grade of primary?
I think the project that I presented, particularly the first part of the project, which is creating a booklet, for example, is a very good example of using STEAM with students at primary levels. Again, that is, it doesn't mean that you're gonna stop teaching English to all of a sudden become a science teacher or an arts teacher, but rather you enhance and enrich the practice of language through the exploration of STEAM topics, exactly the way I did before. If you notice, we concentrated on the vocabulary and the grammar that was target, and then at the end, we incorporated the STEAM content and we finished the practice with a hands-on project. So the younger your kids, the bigger the possibilities for do hands-on, like booklets, or maybe, I don't know, building up things out of cardboard, whatever you typically use for projects, but now with a STEAM edge.
Well, the next question is from Xavi. Can you provide us links or websites for a video similar what you showed us?
Absolutely. Again, drop me a line or visit our social media or our main website, which is eltngl.com. You can visit our main website and you can find tons of videos. Now, if you want to go really into this, I strongly recommend you to visit nationalgeographic.com. It's a free access, and you can find tons of videos and images for enriching your practice with STEAM content. So
Awesome.
You can visit our sites or go to nationalgeographic.com and go crazy.
Well, the next question is from Fiorella Samariego. She says, how can we approach other topics with low-level students so that they don't take off running?
I think it's a matter of moderating. For example, the video I used, it's rather long, and it has a language at the high, intermediate, or advanced level. So if you feel, for example, that the video, it's a bit too challenging for your students, then don't use video and maybe use images only. Or maybe instead of using a video, you use a reading that it's at your students' proficiency level. But again, the key is paving your students' understanding by means of doing the grammar and vocabulary practices that I did before presenting them with the STEAM content and the project. Because if you don't help them understand the language before the project, then chances are they're going to be freaked out with the project itself.
Okay, sir, this is a comment. So, Maria Lourdes Bernardo. Great. With these activities and videos, we can explore previous knowledge and connect with the new experiences.
Exactly. And that's a big deal of it. Has to do with connecting with background prior knowledge, but also bringing the world into their classrooms and opening your students' understanding and expectations of how English is truly a global language, and how with English they can access the world and everything in it.
Well, sir, that was the last comment what we received. Thank you very much for your presentation. We learn new things. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And do get in touch. You have my contact details. I don't know if you can actually get back on my presentation so the audience can see my contact details once again. Or you can just simply look me up on Google. I'm Jair Felix. I'm Jair Felix NGL on Facebook. And I'll be more than happy to assist you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, just to wrap up these online presentations, please let me give you some recommendations. Let's go for it. So, thanks both of speakers for their participation and all the teachers who have been connected this afternoon. It has been a wonderful experience to be able to share experiences and information with all colleagues. Now, guys, We're waiting you for tomorrow morning. Just reminding you, 9 a.m. Peruvian time. Just please get online a few minutes before, because we don't want you to miss anything, any details from the event. Furthermore, we remind you that tomorrow's event will be divided in 2 blocks. Please keep it in mind. One in the morning with 3 presentations from 9 to 12. Remember, Peruvian time if you're watching us from other country. And another in the afternoon from 3 to 5 p.m. with 2 final presentations. Last but not least, also reminding you to obtain, there were some questions that they were asking for the certification. This is the information, please, to obtain certificates of attendance. You must participate at least 5 conferences of the 7 that we are offering in total. So, have a good evening. We are very grateful with your participation. I'm really appreciate it. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bye-bye. Have a good night.